Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan.
Hi, Guthrie.
And we are also here with Amii LaPointe, assistant professor at the Milwaukee School of Engineering. Hello, Amii.
Hello, how are you? Hello.
All right, Guthrie, I got a warning for you.
Yeah.
Amii and I, we haven't known each other very long, but the couple of times we've had conversations on the phone and in person, you can't stop us from talking. You're going to have such a hard time getting in on this conversation. You're going to have to be really assertive if you want in.
Well, the pressure's on now. The pressure's on.
You guys saw each other not too long ago.
We did, yeah. So I went down to Milwaukee to meet Amii in person. When was that? Like a couple weeks ago. And
I think 2-3 weeks ago that was, and we finally got to meet face to face for the very first time, and we solved the world's problems.
We did in about 20 minutes, I think, and then some other people joined us. Yeah, we just took off, and it was lots of fun. And then I looked at her and I said, I think you should come on the podcast.
And I said, I can do that.
Yeah, because we were talking about so much fun stuff. So I guess I'd like to start. Actually, I don't know if you've told me this or not, but can you give us a little bit of your background? Like, how did you end up as a professor at Milwaukee School of Engineering teaching user experience kind of stuff?
Yeah, I guess I didn't even realize I was going to wind up here. So I don't know if it's an interesting story, but it's a story nonetheless. I have been user experience professional for years and years, and where do I even begin? So I guess start at the beginning. I went to the University of Washington, and I was originally an electrical engineering major, and about the middle of my junior year, I realized that was not for me, and that if I had to be an electrical engineer, I would probably wind up it would have been very bad. So I found the field of technical communication, and at that point in time, the University of Washington was starting to transition their technical communication program into human-centered design and engineering, which is what it's called today. And I took a couple of classes, and I was hooked, graduated from the University of Washington with my undergrad in technical communication with an emphasis in usability. And during that journey at the University of Washington, we had a guest speaker come in from a company called, what were we called at the time? I think it was NetPodium at the time. And they were talking about webcasting software, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the entire world. And I thought it was even cooler that they had a user experience team, or at that time, just a usability team, human-centered design, I think they were called, that was really focused on making that best possible experience. And so I emailed them until they hired me on as an intern. I emailed them every day for, I want to say, a good month, and finally they said, okay, come work for us. And so I did, and that was really the start of my career as a usability professional.
And so also, now we know that if you email and suggest something, everyone should just give in right away.
Yes, absolutely, because I'm pretty determined. That's one of my qualities, if you will. I don't know if it's a positive quality or a negative quality, but it's a quality nonetheless. But it wound up working out really, really well until we all got .com bubble burst. We all laid off, as many of us got laid off during that time.
So you eventually made your way somehow to Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my husband and I are originally from Milwaukee.
Okay.
So we moved to Milwaukee, or moved back to Milwaukee, I should say, to be with our family. Although if our family was not in Milwaukee, we would definitely still be in the Seattle area because it's absolutely beautiful. And have you guys been?
Yes, but Milwaukee's beautiful too, Amii.
It is absolutely
Well,
beautiful. It is, but it's so cold here. It's so cold, and we don't get that in the Seattle area. So absolutely, I love Milwaukee. I love that I'm here, but it's a little too cold for me. So doesn't mean that I don't enjoy my hats, my gloves, and my coat though. So
So how long have you been at MSOE, Milwaukee School of Engineering?
hmm So the Milwaukee School of Engineering, I've been here for a little over a year,
Oh, not very
about
long.
a year and a half now,
Yeah. So
officially. And
how did you move from, the corporate world to teaching?
yeah, so I had taught, I've been teaching now for about 7 years, not at Milwaukee School of Engineering. I was at a community college called the Waukesha Area Technical College, or WCTC. And that kind of happened by chance as well. I was in the corporate world. I was at a company called Northwestern Mutual. And there's a strong culture of lunching there because the company has free lunch every day. And I had sat down with a coworker at the time, and he was teaching at WCTC and in a web development program. And he explained what he was doing, and I said, "Wow, that sounds like fun. I'd like to teach." And he said, "Hey, we might have some openings."
Yeah.
So I started teaching part-time at WCTC shortly after that conversation. And from there, I was teaching a web design class, and it was kind of a crazy class because we were teaching Flash, Dreamweaver,
oh man.
and what else? Flash, Dreamweaver, and Photoshop, all in one class to people that had never done any sort of web design
I
before.
remember I remember Flash back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Flash was kind of a crazy
I
thing.
remember Dreamweaver back in the
Well,
day.
we all remember Dreamweaver.
Well, do you remember Front Page though?
Yeah,
That's
I remember that.
I
I
don't
used to use
I
that
don't
stuff.
remember front
Yeah,
page.
that's before
That's
your
before
time,
me.
Guthrie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Front Page was Microsoft's version of Dreamweaver, and that's why I learned to code. Because I was
Mm.
constantly having to fix the code within Front Page for the WYSIWYG editor.
Yeah, that's what you had to do. You would do the front page, and then you'd find somebody who could fix the code from what you had done. That's what
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did
Yep.
years
Yep.
and years
Well,
ago. That's how I had my first web page.
my Front Page was notorious for putting in breaks in weird places. So if you didn't know code, you did learn how to
And
find breaks.
Jen, if you're listening, remember those days? I had my a wonderful graphic designer slash web designer who's now a UX person, Jen. She was my code fixer back in the day.
Okay.
So
I,
then, all right, so you went from the community college.
yep. So I was doing that while I was working my corporate gig, and through my corporate gig, I also was introduced to a woman here, Dr. Nadia Shalamova at Milwaukee School of Engineering. And it was kind of strange because she had reached out to me like 5 or 6 years ago, and then I didn't hear from her. And then about 3 years ago, we reconnected, and she asked me to be part of the Milwaukee School of Engineering's Industrial Advisory Committee, which is a
Oh,
committee that is every program at the Milwaukee School of Engineering has an industrial advisory committee in order to ensure that we stay aligned with what industry needs.
yeah.
And so she asked me to be part of the committee. And at that point in time, the user experience and communication design program here at MSOE was the technical communication program. And so, like the University of Washington when I was there, but quite a bit later, there was a need to figure out, okay, what happens to the program next? And there was a lot of those conversations in the Industrial Advisory Committee. And
Yeah.
being a TCer by education that into the field of user experience,
So, yeah, I
a
mean,
lot of conversations on that.
people listening may not, I don't know how many people. Guthrie, do you remember the the whole STC, technical communication, or was that before your time?
STC.
Yeah, apparently before his time. So years ago, really, in some ways, before there was, I guess at the same time, I don't know historically which came first, but there was usability, but there was this huge field of people who were technical communicators, and STC was the Society for Technical Communicators, and
and they're still around.
They're still around because I used to speak at their conferences, and this was okay. What you have to imagine, Guthrie, is that software is being created at an alarming rate. Applications are being created, and they're all pretty much unusable. And there aren't any usability people or UX people or designers who are creating them. So when the software is done, or be right before it's done, and they know that regular people aren't going to be able to use it, they create training manuals and learning manuals and documentation for how to use this software. And somebody has to write all that documentation and explain to someone how to use this pretty much unusable software. And that was a technical communicator. So really they were kind of like usability people, except they couldn't fix anything. They could just find what the problems were and then figure out how to explain to someone how to use this thing that had all these problems. So fascinating. I mean, it was an interesting problem, and
technical communicators were basically translators.
Yeah, they were, and they did. I mean, thank God for them, and they did a wonderful job. Luckily, everyone finally started listening to them because they were. I'm sure they were aware that if you'd only fix this thing, I wouldn't have to write 5 pages on how to fill out this one form.
Do you remember when inline help started coming about and how crazy of a phenomenon that was?
I do. Yeah, help screens. Yep. I used to teach a class on how to design online help. And I used to work on help systems. Yeah, Guthrie, there was a whole career. There was a career you could have in how to in writing help messages. That was like your career, not error messages, help messages. Guthrie, do you even know what a help message is?
Yeah, man, they have help messages on all kinds of stuff.
All right,
these things happen. It's actually in pretty most HTML templates these days have help message. I mean, some people use them, some people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. It's definitely different. But like when I started Skype up earlier, they're like, "Oh, we have a new version," and then it spotlights like the things. Is that is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, it used to be incredibly elaborate, though. I mean, they would go on for pages and pages, and you could get help for, and you had to decide, am I going to give page level help and field level help, and I mean, there was it was a whole thing. Anyway, that's what the technical communicators.
We have tutorials now, right? Like if you
and they did tutorials too. Yeah, it was
it's more linear and a lot more wordy than they are today, and not as interactive.
It was a lot of just pages of text,
or a hyperlink to more information, which was also phenomenal too. When you could actually put the hyperlink next to a field that needed help, rather than having to have it in a centralized help place.
See, Guthrie, literally, you would get a manual. Okay.
I remember in Windows.
100-page manual with your software.
When you had software and you pressed on the little the question mark.
Yeah.
And then the help manual would open.
Yeah.
And it was part of the Windows bundle, whatever software.
Anyway, that's what STC was and is all about.
Yep.
All right, keep going, Amy.
So where was I? So Nadia and I had started having conversations around, okay, what's the next phase of the technical communication program? Because we were seeing that or she was seeing that students were no longer as interested in writing help, even though it's very important,
I mean,
of course.
In fairness, I wouldn't want to be interested in that. That sounds that sounds horrible. Writing long technical documents that no one wants to read.
There are still people that enjoy it. So I've met a number of people that really enjoy that kind of work. But and I think that there's still a need in some places, but it's not nearly as much as what we needed back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Hey, Amy, you know what? I remember a conversation I had. There was this guy, and he was a technical communicator, and he was going through my training program to be a usability person. I think it was before the days of UX, and so he was going to switch careers, right? And instead of documenting the bad system and how to work around it, he was going to now design better systems. And he went through the whole training program, and he went and did the the job of a UX person for maybe like a year or two. And then he contacted me, and he said he hated it and he wanted to go back to being a technical communicator. And I was like, no one had ever said that, and I said, why? And here's what he said. It was interesting. He said, as a designer, as a UX person, I'm having to constantly defend my design decisions because the other people on the team, the designers and the developers, they don't want to do it that way. And so all I'm doing is like fighting battles about why they should do it differently. He said, when I was a technical communicator, but I just went off and did my thing, and nobody's going to argue with me about how I'm documenting.
Well, because it doesn't impact
the system.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, well, that's kind of, and he said, I just can't take it anymore. I can't take all the arguments.
No,
defending.
I get his argument. I feel his pain. I feel like that's all that I've done my entire career, which is what I've had the exact same conversation since the beginning, and that's exactly what he was talking about. And it's exhausting at times, but
it is.
Job as kind of the early professionals in user experience is to help educate people, which is also why it's so fantastic that I'm in the position that I'm in right now. I'm just taking all those conversations that I've had multiple times, and I'm packaging it in a way that makes sense to students so that they can go out and
I think the other thing that made me think of when he did that was that you have to, what I told him, and now what I tell a lot of people when I'm, I'm training people how to do this work, you have to change what your definition of success is.
Yes.
So, as a technical communicator, success meant, he finished the project, he had documented the best way to learn and use this product, even with its faults.
Yep.
And, he had the project done, and people were using his documentation and so on. As a usability / UX person, you're part of a team. Some of your ideas are going to get implemented. Others are not going to get implemented. And so you have to define. What I say is there anything that you have done in this project that has resulted in this product being having a better user experience because you were involved? Anything, not just any small thing, any big thing, but not all your ideas are implemented, but just is the product a better product because you were involved in it? And if the answer is yes, then you were a success on that project. And you have to do that. Otherwise you're going to be so beaten down and exhausted. And you're not going to have a sense of being successful. And I think it's you have to take on that mindset shift, as you said, that your role, it's an evolution. You're people are learning, you're educating people, and you're making whatever improvements you can make. I mean, maybe that's defeatist. I don't know.
No, I, I don't think it's defeatist at all. I think that there's something to be said about being done with a project, a sense of gratification with it. But with our work, because it is so iterative, and we see it in no matter what process you're using, it's always iterative. And I think that iteration is you need to figure out, as you had mentioned, what does success look like to you? What does done look like to you? Is it okay that you just changed one minor thing, but it could make some huge changes, and you need to feel like that success is enough. But for some people, it's not enough, and I can see there are very exhausting there. And I also think, especially as we're bringing in agile development and figuring out where UXers fit into agile, that's even more difficult because it's even more iterative than what we have. But for the individual that you were talking about, he might have thrived in it because you have very distinct time frames that you're working within, and you absolutely have a definition of what done means. So at the end of the day, you can really look at what you've done, what you've completed, and feel maybe better about it than in the waterfall methodology, although our what we do as UX professionals is fits a little bit better into waterfall. That's where a lot of churn, I think, happens as well.
So Guthrie, Amii, when we met a couple weeks ago, she was telling me about a course she's teaching on agile, and so then we went off into a whole agile.
Yeah, I'm kind of on an agile train right now, and I'm letting it take me wherever it takes me.
She's let go and is being taken down. I had this image when you said that of, you were like in a fast-moving river, you were holding onto a branch, and you let go.
Yep. Yes,
and
that's exactly.
Just let the river take you away.
That's
see where you're going to end up.
That's right, and I have no idea where it is, and so, which is scary and exciting at the same time, right?
So you're teaching in an undergraduate program,
correct?
And there are not. I don't think there are a lot, because we were talking about this. There aren't a lot of undergraduate programs where you can get a degree or at least have a major in, user experience or human factors or usability or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And they have that at MSOE.
Yes. Yep. We're about a year old now. So this past fall is the first year that we started offering the program, although we started offering some of the classes last year. So we are brand new, and it's pretty exciting to be part of a brand new program as well, because we get to shape it and we get to be cutting edge, if you will, when it comes to developing our curriculum, because we're totally transforming from technical communication into this new space. So we're really able to test the waters in a lot of different ways. Also, the Milwaukee School of Engineering just received a $31 million donation in order to build a computational sciences building here, focusing on artificial intelligence.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, from a UX perspective, that's like the next phase of where we're going. So even
I want to come to school there.
Yeah, so being able to develop a new user experience program in a field that's still maturing, and being at a university that's going to be really focused on the next phase of what tech looks like for us is even more exciting.
Well, now, what department are you in?
We are in the Humanities and Social Sciences department right now.
Really?
Yeah, which is interesting as well. Because we were technical communication before, and so technical communication fits into the humanities department. more so than any of the other engineering.
Wait a minute. So if you're a student in,
Yep.
you go to Milwaukee School of Engineering.
Yep.
You can get a degree in humanities?
There we have business degrees, we have nursing degrees, engineering degrees, and we have a few humanities degrees as well, which technical communication was that, but now it's user experience and communication design. So yes.
Wow, that's different.
Yes, it is. It creates a really diverse student population as well. And a lot of people don't realize the breadth and depth of education that you can get from this university.
Yeah, see, I would have thought, you're in software engineering.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, well, and that's part of the beauty of where we are as well, is that we have all these engineers around us too. So we have lots of opportunities to collaborate with different areas of engineering, software engineering, computer engineering being probably the closest to us, being in the digital environment. However, there's so many applications for user experience outside of just the digital space that we, as we become more mature, will continue to explore further partnerships with other programs and see where that takes us. Especially, like I said, with the computational sciences building coming, we need to figure out how we fit in there, and that's a question that we've been asked by our new administration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how many since you're new as a program, I mean, you're not new, you were there before, but you've changed. You probably don't have a whole lot of students going through, is this a degree that you're offering? Is it a major?
Yeah, it's a Bachelor of Science in User Experience and Communication Design.
Okay.
And right, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. And right now we have our first class, our first cohort is graduating this fall, who transitioned over from technical communication into user experience. So I think we have 4 people graduating, which is going to be very exciting for us. And then we have 28 individuals right now that have entered into the program.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So we're hoping to grow that even further. Obviously.
I know, because I teach, I'm an adjunct at University of Wisconsin in Stevens Point, and I just know that, you have a new program or you make a major change in your program, and it takes a while for the students to find out and the faculty advisors to know so that they can point students towards you. And so, 28 is pretty good.
Yeah, we also have a minor in user experience community. And that's been pretty popular as well, especially for our software engineering students, because it complements so well. We also have had a couple of students that have come from other majors. One in particular was a construction management major, and she started taking some of our user experience classes just last winter, and she fell in love with it. But our program was not as far along as she needed it to be, because she's going to be graduating this fall. But she decided to get her minor in user experience, and she's likely going to be going on to be a user experience professional. And so we've been helping her along the way as well, which is really what I love about this university too, because we have really low ratios for students to professors. We're able to mentor and help students, and because we're learning too, and that's part of being part of an academic program, is that you need to learn from your students too. But for those students that may not have been able to take part of getting the major, we're able to help coach them into the space in a different way, as well as we're transitioning to.
So what do you okay, so what courses, what's your favorite course to teach, and what's your least favorite? And we won't tell anybody. No one will know. No one will listen to this podcast.
Well, honestly, that's a tough one. my favorite courses are always the courses that I'm teaching right now, because I get so into them. I get so immersed into them because it's so much fun learning, and learning with my students, and they get me excited. And so that's a hard one. And again, maybe different quarters, it's going to feel different for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, though, if I were to choose the one that probably, I don't know if it's my least favorite, but it's the one that I think I need to do the most work on to get it where
Yeah. The most challenging.
Yeah, is actually my user experience research methods class.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason why is because I've been doing user experience for so long that it's hard to teach something that you've been doing forever. And it's hard to do it in a way that's engaging and not be frustrated that you need to get people that are very, very new, interested and understanding and proficient at what you're doing. And so it's me.
That's interesting.
Me being a little critical of maybe myself in the way that I'm teaching it, because I've been doing it for so long, and I don't think I'm doing as good of a job as maybe.
Yeah, I've taught some courses that at least had parts where we were doing, user research, and I think I know what you mean. I mean, for me, it was like breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, wait a minute, why don't you see how?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of course,
yes.
Of course this is important. Of course you have to do it. Of course it's relevant, and I don't even think about that. So now I had to stop and explain.
Yes. Yes.
Why it's important that you do it this way and not that way, and I just it just seemed foreign to me to have to back up that far, maybe, to even have people understand why you would need to do some of the things you need, or why it would be really important to do it this way and not that way.
Yes. And yes. It's very, and my feedback from my students, you kind of, being a user experience professional, of course, I love feedback, and I love data. And so some of the feedback from my students was, you've been doing this for your whole life. We're new to this. And that's something that has kind of stuck with me, because I tend to be determined and a perfectionist at that as well. And so apparently maybe I was a little rough on my grading, which now I caveat when my students come into my classes, that I've been told that maybe I'm a tough grader. But I guess that's also part of becoming a better professional. And for me, coming from the corporate world, I've had to really figure out what it means to be a professor and how to teach things as well. And user experience research methods class, again, is something that I've been doing for so long. And also I was teaching it different variations of this class over time. And I just feel like maybe I need to evolve it even further. And there's so much going on right now. It's hard for me also to be teaching not the old. So I use the Handbook of Usability Testing as my textbook, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Handbook of Usability Testing and the usability. And this is such great stuff. I'm holding the book right now and kind of paging through it. And there's so much good stuff in here, but it's very, very, very intense.
Yeah.
It's very scientific, if you think about it. And I always liken the process that you go through to the scientific method as you're thinking about usability testing. And we need to, in getting back to my agile UX class that I'm teaching this quarter, how do I find the balance between the two? How do I teach what I'm teaching in user experience research methods that is the long form of research into an agile world?
I had an interesting thing happen in class, in the class I'm teaching. this semester I'm teaching human information processing, and we're at the point in the class where now the students are going to start to work on case studies, to apply everything we've been doing. So what I find, and I don't know how different, the students I have are from yours, but what I find is that they understand the principles fairly well and can apply them fairly well. But then I give them a twist, because now we're going to apply them not just to a product or a website or an app, but we're going to have we're going to define a persona, and we're going to define a scenario, and we're going to define tasks that the user wants to do. And we're going to look at the product and evaluate the different principles based on that persona and scenario. And that was like, they were like, what? So they were used to looking at this software or website or whatever and deciding based on their opinion and their point of view what was working and what wasn't working. But now I was forcing them to say, no, it's not your point of view. You got to take the point of view of the woman who runs the dental office.
Yep.
And is wondering if she should get a new supplier of dental, supplies for the office. And that's not you.
Yep.
And that was a tough transition for them to take it out of what they think is best, and look at it from that user point of view, which is, and that's another one of those things I think, Amii, that I've been doing for my whole career, right? Is taking the user's point of view, like putting myself aside. So it is like, well, of course you would do that, right? And then of course I made it even more complicated, because I gave them the scenario of the user, and then I gave them the scenario of the product owner. Who has this website, and here's what Katie, the dental office manager, wants to do, and here's what the company that runs this website wants Katie to do, and those two things don't match.
Yep.
And now what are you going to do? And they were like, deer in the headlights. Is like, what? And it's like, well, that's the real world. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. And that's what I tell my students too, when we're going through this. And I think my experience in these situations where I can share stories around it, and similar to the scenario, is really, really incredibly helpful for learning purposes, because it makes the tacit concrete. And that's the part that's really hard, I think, that you need to start doing, and until you do, you don't understand the importance of some of the nuances of what we do as users.
It's a lot of nuances. All right, so what's your that was your most challenging one.
Yep.
What's the like easiest or most fun or least challenging?
I am totally digging my Agile UX class. It's Agile.
You are, huh?
Yes. And I am digging it in a way that I never thought that I would like Agile. Because when I was doing Agile UX, and I didn't quite get it, because it was so chaotic. It wasn't very linear. I got it, but I didn't. But it was such a shift and change. And fortunately, when I was at Northwestern Mutual, there were a ton of resources available to me, including coaches that helped me through the process. But even with all of the help that I had and all the resources that I had available, still wasn't 100% like, not that I wasn't sold. It's just I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, you weren't sold. So is this an example of, in order to really learn something, you have to teach it?
Maybe. Yeah. I think that might be it, because I'm experimenting with it on my own too, in my personal life, which is kind of strange.
Well, yeah, Guthrie, we were talking when we met a couple weeks ago. she told me she was having her students create a Kanban
Yeah.
of their life.
Yep. So
Wait.
we haven't
A
gotten there
a
yet.
Kanban for their life, or literally like a Kanban of everything they've done in their life?
No, a Kanban just for their, day to day, right? Is that right,
Yep.
Amy?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. So
sure.
yep, they haven't they know it's coming. So my students haven't started Kanbaning. Next week they'll get the assignment and they'll start Kanbaning. I've started Kanbaning my life now for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, so
And
then I was telling her that, and now we should probably, all right, Guthrie, since you haven't had a chance to say anything, do you want to do a quick explanation of what we mean when we say Kanbaning or doing a
So
Kanban for people
Kanban
who don't
is
know?
just is named after a thing, and it's basically a way
Named
of
after
yeah.
thing.
Well, it's accurate, and
Kanban is a Japanese word for billboard, from what I understand, or visual board,
so it's
large
correct.
board. Hmm.
By thing, I meant visual board, and
Okay.
it's a very flexible way of. I'm supposed to describe what a Kanban is. Very flexible
Yeah.
way of organizing the tasks that you have to do into bite-sized things, and then working on a limited number of tasks at a time to maximize the amount of stuff you get done without missing anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I had
we've talked about Kanbans before. Basically, you have like a sprint phase, and you kind of move things into this is what we're really working on, and then you get stuff done faster.
Yeah. So basically, it's to do, doing, and done is the essence, which is fascinating to me to think about how simplistic something can be, but how much more efficient it can make life processes and so many different things. So
yeah, it's been really I mean, I haven't really, I can't say I use it necessarily in my personal life, although maybe I should, but we've been using it for, as I told you a couple weeks ago, Amy, for our work stuff. Just for, what projects are we working on right now? And it's helped me tremendously. I think it's helped us as a team as
Yeah.
Well, yes. So your students are going to experience it.
Correct. Yeah. And so I'm excited to see them because I wanted to get ahead of it and do this on my own first, which is why I'm really enjoying, I guess, to your original question, why I'm really enjoying this class. It's the first time that I'm teaching it as well. So I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm trying to be very agile about that as well. And really focusing on making things better, listening, and not trying to make everything perfect.
Yeah.
And so it's just been the 3 weeks that I've been doing the Kanbaning of my life. I'm noticing that how much I do on a weekly basis. Also noticing the mixture of the tasks that I'm putting on my Kanban.
Yeah.
So my husband has gotten totally on board with it too. And so for you and to be using a Kanban board as a communication tool and also to get things done, I think that's fantastic. But I think as a family, I think something that I'm also interested in too, that this is kind of a connection to, is the connected family, and how can we connect families in different ways in order to better communicate. And the idea of the personal or using Kanban or Kanbaning your life is really interesting because it's a communication tool and it also just shows how chaotic people's lives are. And it also helps us to see how we prioritize things in our head differently based on who we are and what our priority is for a specific thing. Which I'm hoping that not only is it going to make me more efficient, help my husband and I communicate better, but as my students do this, I want to, and I'm going to have
and I don't think it's just efficiency. I mean, it definitely has helped us be more efficient, but I think it has. I think for me, it has relieved an enormous amount of stress.
Yes. Well, and so that's really interesting that you say that, Susan, because I've been showing everybody my Kanban. So I have these really ugly, it's in my husband's bathroom, which is kind of a strange place to be bringing people
Okay,
into
that's a
our bathroom.
strange place to have your Kanban chart,
It
I
is.
gotta say.
But we have these really ugly mirrors. So we have our house is built in the 90s, and there are these we have like 12 ugly tall mirrors, and so I started using anyways. So I've been bringing people into my bathroom to show them because I've been wanting to get people's opinions on it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is that now I just lost my train of thought.
We were talking about stress, relieving stress.
So one of the individuals that I brought in, her name is Tammy, and she's working on her PhD in human capital, and so I was really interested in getting her take on it. And she was like, "This makes me anxious."
Yeah.
It made her anxious?
It made her anxious looking at it, and I said, "I can see," and that's kind of when I show people our Kanban.
Yeah.
It makes them anxious initially, but then when I start explaining it to them, I can see that their bodies and their calm, like they start like getting it, seeing how it could apply to their lives. And I guess to your point,
Guthrie, what do you think about what's your take on anxious versus less stressed?
I mean, I don't. Some people definitely feel anxious when they feel like there's a mountain of things that they have to do, and I personally have never been one of those people. I generally have my own internal system of keeping track of what I need to do, and so I have a pretty good sense of how big my mountain is. I think a lot of people are not very good at doing that internally, and so they're not stressed about what they have to do. They're more stressed that they don't know how much they have to do, and that can be a lot of trouble for them.
It's very interesting. I mean, I think, like, I know there are people who like using in to-do lists, and Kanban, I guess, is a type of to-do list, but I find it a very different type because I've always had to-do lists, and that didn't help me be more efficient or productive or less stressed when I had to-do lists.
That's really one of the reasons why I came up with the idea as I was developing this class, because I wanted to bring Kanban into my class, because we're doing Scrum, but Kanban is also extremely important. But I didn't want to mix the two with students with their group projects. So I'm like, well, how can I bring it in? And this was really a great way in order to bring it in a way that might be meaningful to students, because what I had found is that I'm a to-do list person. My mom is the person that started to do this. I remember as a kid, my mom always had to-do lists laying on the counter, and she was constantly back to her to-do list. And that's kind of how I've managed and planned my life. But what I found is that I'm constantly rewriting these to-do lists over and over again. And if God forbid I lose my to-do list, because I don't always keep them digital, but then I'm also writing to-do lists and taking pictures of my to-do list and then putting them in Evernote. So it's like this cycle of, I know, as Guthrie said, what my mountain looks like, but understanding how to make it flow in the most efficient way, it just wasn't working as well in the system that I had created of to-do lists, post-it notes, pictures, Evernote, email, calendar.
Yeah. Well, I've studied the research on creativity, and I've been teaching a fair amount when I teach I teach some workshops at my local yoga studio, actually.
Oh, fun!
On mindfulness and that kind of thing, and I always bring in the research on how the brain works when you're being creative, which is not just creativity; it's just how the brain works. So, you've got this certain parts of your brain that work together that are called the executive attention network, and that's where you put your focus on a particular problem you want to solve, or thing you want to work on, or whatever it is. So it's your focused attention on a task.
Yep.
And then what we know is that the way your brain works most naturally and best is if you set that attention and then you let it go. And then you're what's called, I hate the name of this, it's the imagination network, which I always think of Disney,
Yes.
running the imagination network. But anyway, it's parts of your brain that in a largely unconscious way sift through your knowledge, sift through your experiences, run simulations, and that all goes on in unconsciously, based on the intention you set with the executive network part. And then what happens is there's one more network called the salience network, and what that does is it's constantly monitoring all the other networks. And so when you come up with an idea, a simulation, and so on, that fits that problem you were trying to solve, the salience network kind of grabs it and brings it to conscious attention as an idea, inspiration. And we've all had this experience, right? You're working on something, and then you're trying to figure out, what should I do about this, what should I do about that, and then you let it go and you go take the dog for a walk, or an hour goes by, or a week, or a month, and then all of a sudden you get this idea, oh wait, I know, I could do such and such. That's your salience network. And so this is like the normal way your brain works to do all the time. And so I think, for me at least, what the Kanban does is it makes it very clear, you've got all this possible stuff, and that you could do, or could be working on, or could be solving, or whatever. And there's all the possible stuff, and you got that all on the big list. But then you when you take one or two items and move them into the next column on the Kanban, essentially you're telling your executive attention network, this is what we're going to focus on. And then, because you have done that, and because you know that you're only going to work on one or two things at a time, and everything else is still there, but it's on the main list, it's not in the sprint. I believe what it does is because we know that the imagination network can't go do its thing if the executive network is always is always on. The imagination network will be relatively quiet until that executive attention network turns off. So I think what happens is that with Kanban, it allows you to set that intention very clearly, but it also allows you to turn that off so that you can go and let your imagination network figure out how to do the work. That's my theory.
I love it. I was writing things down as you we're talking, and I'm really excited to dig into all the salient network, imagination network, and executive attention network from my notes more deeply, because I am really feeling like the idea of Kanbaning the life could have some real, from a user experience perspective, some real benefits if we start thinking about breaking down tasks differently and using some of the methods from Agile in order to do so, especially with the coming of artificial intelligence, the idea of machine learning. We need to learn how people are actually, and I know that there's lots of studies out there about the way people work. There's lots of time studies, yada, yada, yada. But have we really started thinking about how things flow through these three networks that you were just talking through? And can we understand that better so that we can match some of the machine learning algorithms better to the way that we live as human beings, therein freeing up time for humans to be humans? And that's another big more philosophical question is, what is the purpose of a human being ultimately? But I don't even think we can get to that point if we are constantly having all of these tasks and we are unable to free up time for us to move ourselves to the next level. And so also the idea of how people are breaking down the tasks and what's important to them and what language they're using is also extremely important too, because as we know with the new systems that are coming out, like Alexa, like natural language is not there's always the strong suit. So how do we improve those two? What can we learn from this, and how do we again, there's a lot of different thoughts here, but I think that there's something from a UXer perspective that maybe we as professionals within our field can start thinking about these different tools that we have in our toolbox. We have a whole bunch of them already, but how do we use them in different ways in order to learn more deeply about human beings and the way that we want to interact with technology?
Yeah,
I mean these are the hot things I think in UX these days is kind of both UX but then like applied to life.
Yes,
I feel like it's very so hot right now.
Yeah,
it's very very trendy.
Well, life is not getting any easier. And even though we have all these technologies that we are, as UX professionals, accountable for making them easier, are they really making our lives easier? I feel like a lot of times we have so much that's thrown at us. Like, I feel sometimes when talking to my students, like, I have no idea what's going on in the world because there's so much. There's no possible way that I can know everything that's going on. But how does everything fit together? How do they coordinate together? How does technology coordinate with one another? And I don't know.
This is what I like about Amii. She never thinks about the big picture. Just the little things in life. She's only concerned with what she's going to have for lunch.
Speaking of lunch.
Speaking of lunch, yeah. All right. You're right, Guthrie. Speaking of lunch, we probably have reached our limit of what we can talk about. Amii, I knew when I told you should come on the podcast that we would not have any trouble filling up an hour, and I think we probably did that. If people would like to reach you, if they're interested maybe in checking out MSOE, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Probably emailing me at this point. So it would be LaPointe, LAPOINTE at MSOE.edu. It's probably the best way. And you can feel free to share my information if you would like as well. So that's probably the best
Guthrie,
way. Or just looking at Milwaukee School of Engineering, also our website. We're in the process of going through a university website redesign, which is why I didn't automatically go to msoe.edu, which has a wealth of information about the university. But we haven't quite transitioned all of our content out there yet, as we all know as UX professionals, that the content is always the
and Guthrie, if people want to reach us,
they can email info@theteamw.com and talk, share the podcast with a friend. That's it, right?
And
they should go to blog.theteamw.com. We're actually doing a lot of content recently.
Yeah, we have a lot of new content, and everyone should try Kanbaning their life.
Yes, they should.
Amii, thanks so much for coming on board. We've really enjoyed talking to you.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.